I saw my brother mixing pesticide into the flour. For my family's safety, I disposed of the contaminated flour. As a result, grandfather beat me almost to death, scolding me for only destroying food. My wounds became infected, but no one cared, leaving me to die from the illness once more. Waking up, I found myself back on the very day my brother poured pesticide into the flour. This time, I wouldn't meddle in their affairs. Let's see if they appreciate their food now. Grandmother, ever the saver, took the poisoned flour to make a pot of flour soup, logically stating, "How can it be poison? Just add a bit more flour and it'll be fine." The blood on my wounds had dried and the pain was gradually fading. A high fever slowly drained my life. Unwilling, I opened my eyes again. Once more, I saw my brother pouring pesticide into the bag of flour. I pinched my arm. Though the bruises still covered my body, this time there was no sign of infection. I couldn't believe it. I was back on the very day I intended to stop grandmother from eating the poisoned flour. In my previous life, for their safety, I had defied their prohibitions and thrown the toxic flour into the waste disposal area. They weren't grateful. Instead, they beat me, leaving me crippled. Even with infected wounds and a relentless fever, they didn't care. I eventually died in agony. In this life, I watched my brother, Liam, pour pesticide into the flour. I stood by, arms crossed. If they wanted to eat it, let them eat it. Their deaths had nothing to do with me. Grandfather and grandmother returned with a small bag of meat, saying it was for Bowsy filling. Seeing the empty pesticide box next to the flour bag, they grabbed my ear. Without distinguishing right from wrong, grandfather slapped me hard. A burning sensation spread across my cheek. "You jinx! You've ruined a whole bag of flour. Are you afraid your brother will eat meat? Get out of here. No food for you today." I covered my face, bowed my head, feigning fear, then said, "Brother himself poured the whole box of pesticide in there." Liam stepped forward, saw this, and smugly puffed out his chest. "Grandmother, didn't you say there are always weevils in flour? I sprinkled the pesticide, so there won't be any weevils now." Grandfather and grandmother's faces briefly stiffened, but then they glared at me maliciously. "It's all your fault for spoiling your brother." Yet, immediately after, their expressions changed, beaming with joy as they gave Liam a thumbs up. Truly intelligent, thinking of such a solution. Grandfather pushed me to the edge of the wall, telling me to stir-fry vegetables. Grandmother looked at the poisoned flour for a moment, then opened a new bag of flour and mixed it with the poisoned flour. Stirring it, she smugly said, "Isn't this fine? Just mix in more flour and the poison will be gone. We'll make some flour soup with smoked meat later. It's not spoiled yet. It won't be too late to eat in a few days." Seeing me standing idly, grandmother pushed me. "Go steam a pot of bowsy and get the pickled vegetables." I unconsciously obeyed. Years of beatings had taught me not to argue. Before long, a large pot of flour soup was ready, and the bowsy were nearly done. I went down to the cellar and found a layer of white mold growing on the pickled vegetables. After a moment, I took out 2 more pieces of pickled vegetables, cutting them into small pieces so no one would notice the mold. Just then, my parents returned from work, drenched in sweat. Seeing me bringing the food to the table, father slapped me. "Quick, pour water for your grandfather. You have no common sense." I stumbled backward from the blow, then quickly ran to pour 2 cups of water for them. As I entered the house, I saw the whole family happily harmonious. My parents patted Liam's head, praising his intelligence. "Our Liam is truly clever. He even thought of such a good idea. He's indeed a capable member of the cow family," my mother chimed in. Just as she saw me bringing the water, she glanced at me and said, "This girl is useless, can't even pour water properly. How could she be as smart and clever as Liam? He's sure to have a bright future." I smiled faintly to myself. Let's see if they still say that after they've finished this pot of poisoned flour soup and bowsy. While the family was eating, grandfather spoke up. "I made a mistake, no dinner for me today." I didn't care to eat that poisonous meal anyway. They ate inside, while I was busy alone by the stove. Although grandmother said she wasn't making meat-filled bowsy out of affection for her grandson, she added a bit of meat to the flour soup. She even deliberately scooped all the meat into Liam's bowl. My parents also happily gave him the few meat scraps from their own bowls. The whole family ate the moldy pickled vegetables and devoured 10 bowsy along with a large pot of flour soup, eating until sweat poured from them. Midway through, grandfather and father even called for me to bring more food. I obediently bowed my head, took their bowls, and went to the pot of flour soup. Staring at the soup, I scooped out a generous amount of flour, pouring it into their bowls, leaving only a thin broth. Seeing my compliance, They looked me over and sneered. This girl truly needs a beating to listen. She just got hit and already knows how to care for others. Very good. In a few years, she can be married off to a good family and will get a dowry for your brother. I secretly hated them. If the previous life hadn't happened, I probably would have been sold to some old man soon, just like our neighbor Lynn, who was only 16 when her parents sold her to a bachelor just to get money for her brother's wedding. Hearing them say that, I didn't react. I just picked up the plate of pickled vegetables, added 2 more pieces, and placed them on the table. They continued to eat heartily, cleaning every last bit of food. Liam ate until his belly was round and full. My parents looked at him with joy. Our Liam is truly a smart child. What lucky girl will be his wife? We hope he has a son. They always favored my brother. I was just an outsider in this house. They treated me even worse than the geese they raised for a year. Liam was the little prince of this family. Even though we were poor, if he wanted meat, there would definitely be a plate of stir-fried meat on the table. As for me, if I just wanted a piece of candy, I'd be cursed as a debt collector. My arm was once beaten so badly I couldn't lift it for 2 days. In my previous life, I thought that if I treated them well, they would eventually see it and treat me well too. Only when I died did I realize that in their eyes, I was nothing more than a goose raised for its meat. And if they wanted to die, why should I stop them? In the evening, the poison took effect. My stomach had been empty all day, and I couldn't sleep. In a daze, I felt the lights in the house suddenly switch on. A moment later, grandfather and grandmother's room erupted in chaos. Father was unconscious and couldn't be woken, and my brother couldn't be roused either. The screams grew louder. Mother also started vomiting and suffering from continuous diarrhea, unable to stand upright. Father didn't seem to care and couldn't figure out my brother's condition. Over there, grandmother also began to vomit violently. Father hurriedly pulled out the family's tricycle to take grandfather, grandmother, and my brother to the hospital, telling me I had to come too, or there would be no one to care for them. But there was no room for me in the vehicle. For over 10 kilometers, I could only run, chasing after them to the hospital. My clothes were soaked, and I collapsed to my knees on the ground, my head spinning. My low blood sugar had flared up again. Although Mother was throwing up uncontrollably, she still had the strength to scold me. "You damn brat, don't pretend. We haven't even said anything, and you're already acting pitiful. You don't want to take care of us, so you're putting on a show, aren't you?" At this point, a nurse, unable to bear it, helped me up and took me to get a glucose IV. She glanced at my mother, her eyes full of disdain. Over by grandmother, chaos erupted again. Mother glared at me, clutching her stomach, then left. The whole family was rushed into the emergency room. Not long after, the test results were announced. Sure enough, it was food poisoning. Grandmother, though old, was still strong. After stomach pumping, she was fine. But grandfather and my brother were different. Grandfather already had a history of thrombosis, and this time, consuming too much pesticide, he couldn't be saved and passed away right there at the hospital. My brother was still young and had consumed a considerable amount himself. He almost didn't make it. He only woke up the following afternoon. Mother was fine. It turned out that yesterday, she had given all her share of flour to my brother and father, so she herself had eaten very little. After a day of torment, they all looked pale and exhausted. Luckily, the nurse gave me a Bowsy. Otherwise, I might have fainted from low blood sugar. After tidying up, the family returned home. Mother loudly called father twice, but no one answered. Suddenly, she remembered something and rushed into his room. I followed. Father was still in the same position as when he left. I stepped forward and placed my hand on the back of his hand. It was icy cold. Clearly, the poisoned flour had claimed him. Mother immediately fainted. Grandmother, upon hearing the news, wailed tragically. The words she hissed through clenched teeth implied that I had killed grandfather and father. Though she knew full well she was the one who caused all this, she always found a reason to blame others. In this house, her words were like an iron seal, easily condemning anyone. After cursing me, she turned to my mother and continued to scold. "I told you, a child born to a useless daughter like you can't amount to anything good. You killed my son, don't even think about remarrying. If anyone comes to ask for your hand, I'll kill you and expose how you harmed your husband." Although she was a woman, deep down, she despised women. She hated giving birth to daughters. In fact, she had given birth to 2 daughters before, but in those days, if a girl was born, she would be quietly thrown into the Daughter's Tower. The Daughter's Tower was a forbidden place in the village. Any family that gave birth to a daughter would secretly bring the baby there. Over a decade ago, a leader came for an inspection and discovered this horrifying secret, leading to its complete sealing. I was fortunate enough to be born just as the daughter's tower was banned, so my parents didn't dare discard me. But I was also unlucky to be born into such a family, raised like an animal. That evening, Mother woke up. As soon as she saw me, she shot up, eyes wide with hatred. "It's all your fault, you jinx. I should have thrown you away earlier. You cooked too much flour and lured your father into eating 4 or 5 baozi. How could he possibly handle it?" With that, she slapped me hard across the face, then grabbed my hair and dragged me to the corner. My head hit the wall hard, and combined with the handprint still on my cheek, half my face swelled up like a small hill. My brother, who had just recovered, saw Mother hitting me like this and rushed over, grabbing my ear tightly. His sharp fingernails dug deep into my skin, burning with pain. "It's all your fault. Father said you were a disaster. You killed Father. Give Father back to me." Looking at their faces, they never once thought that they themselves had caused all these consequences. Clearly, I wasn't the one who poured pesticide into the flour, nor did I force their father to eat more. Yet they maliciously singled me out as the culprit. It was their own ignorance that killed them. I wonder if my brother will regret this later, regret that his gluttony cost him his father. But what's the use of thinking too much? People like them only know how to blame others. They just need a scapegoat. The whole village knew that in just one night, both men in the cow family had died. Some suspected it was related to the poison meal, but no one dared to speak out. Grandfather, despite often beating and scolding me at home, always pretended to be a good person outside. When he died, many neighbors voluntarily came to help with the funeral arrangements. Grandmother was in a daze for 2 days, watching my mother run around, handling everything, crying and subtly cursing. "You killed my son. Don't expect to live in peace." My mother was used to being cursed. She only received fewer beatings and scoldings after my brother was born. In rural areas, when there's a funeral, the host family makes baozi to share with neighbors as a way of announcing the death. Grandmother took out the uninfected portion of flour. Looking at the pile of poisoned flour, she still couldn't bear to throw it away. She mixed half a bag of the poisoned flour into the remaining good flour. She also mixed some with rotten vegetables to feed the geese, muttering as she did so, "It's too wasteful to throw away. This time I'm mixing less, so it should be fine." If people don't eat it all, the animals can eat it, so nothing goes to waste. My mother, busy with funeral arrangements, had no idea grandmother still dared to use that poisoned flour. When she finally remembered to ask, grandmother just said she had disposed of it, and my mother didn't ask further. On the day of the funeral, it drizzled. Thanks to grandfather's good connections, the whole village came to attend the ceremony. At noon, the cook came to grandmother, saying the budget wasn't enough. Without more money, there wouldn't be enough meat dishes, and the family would have to provide the ingredients themselves. Grandmother glanced at my mother, then pulled the cook out to the backyard. I had woken up early that morning and saw that all the geese were dead, poisoned. My mother didn't know about the backyard. Grandmother had always personally raised the flock of geese, and now they were dead just when the cook was asking for meat. Grandmother's mind worked quickly. "They haven't been dead long. Butcher them immediately, don't let them go to waste. Don't even think about asking me for more money." In reality, the geese had died much earlier. Otherwise, grandmother would never have killed them, intending to save them to sell for the new year. The cook, unaware of the truth, simply pouted and agreed, but he made it clear that the family would have to clean and prepare them themselves. Grandmother didn't dare let my mother know about this and cleaned 5 or 6 dead geese herself. Those geese were made into goose hot pot and brought to the banquet table. Piece by piece, the goose meat entered everyone's stomachs. A few days later, many villagers were hospitalized. Soon after, the police arrived at our door. Several police officers went straight to the backyard, followed by several neighbors, still holding the baozi our family had sent. Just then, my mother took my brother to the village committee to process the land transfer. Although my brother was underage, by village custom, the land and house had to belong to the son. After signing, my mother was ecstatic. "Finally, the day has come for me to hold my head high." She glanced at me contemptuously, pushing my forehead hard with her finger, almost making me fall. Then she sneered, "Listen carefully. This house and land all belong to your brother. Don't even dream of having a share, you ungrateful wretch. We've raised you this long, you should be grateful. Girls your age have already been sold off. You're lucky to eat and drink in this house. Are you still not satisfied after eating well and living comfortably all these years?" For years, I hadn't eaten enough to be full. I only had their leftovers and scraps. Sometimes, I even had to eat stale food, but I said nothing. As I left the village committee, I saw several police cars parked outside the village gate. Grandmother's end had come. As soon as we arrived home, Grandmother saw me and rejoiced as if she'd seen a savior. "Alice, please tell the police. Grandmother didn't know the geese were dead. When she was cooking, they were still alive." She looked at me full of hope. I just feigned fear, cowering in the corner, avoiding her gaze as if too scared to speak. Then I told the whole truth. After confirming, the police immediately took her away. Grandmother was stunned, clutching her face with both hands as if afraid of being seen. Perhaps only then did she realize that she herself had caused the deaths of grandfather and father. A neighbor saw me still trembling in the corner, helped me up, implying she wouldn't hold a grudge against me. Just a few weeks later, the court sentenced grandmother to 10 years in prison. Grandmother was 65 years old. In 10 years, she might not even live to get out. With the sound of the funeral music fading, everything returned to quiet. The gossip about my family gradually died down. Only then did I have time to think about a way out of this quagmire. If I stayed here, I had only two paths: being sent to the village textile factory as a worker, but my wages would surely be taken by mother to give to my brother, or being sold to a strange man, 99% of whom would be an old, disabled man, because only such men would need to buy a wife. I didn't want either path. I had to escape. Not long after, the appearance of my paternal cousin gave me an opportunity to escape. He wanted to take my brother to live with him, coming from the neighboring village to discuss it with mother. To say he was kind would be impossible, because no one in their family was decent. His son had died a few years ago, leaving him no grandson. Previously, he had tried many times to adopt my brother, but grandfather wouldn't agree. Now that grandfather and grandmother were gone, and there was no man left in charge of the house, he naturally wanted to seize the opportunity to gain benefits. But his real aim wasn't just to have a grandson, it was to also claim the house and land registered under my brother's name. The first time he came, mother flat out rejected him. But the second time, both he and mother were all smiles and pleasantries. Something was wrong. They must have reached some agreement. I quietly approached and eavesdropped on part of their conversation. Initially, the cousin only intended to take my brother, but mother refused. Finally, they agreed that mother would also move there to live. As for me, in their eyes, I was an impediment, a burden. They discussed how to sell me off as quickly as possible. This time, he came to inform mother that he had found a buyer. The buyer was a 40-year-old bachelor, a notorious hoodlum in his youth who had once broken someone's leg in a fight. His reputation was so bad that even the surrounding villages knew about him. No family would agree to marry their daughter to him, even if they were selling her. I finalized the deal with him. 5,000 yuan plus a lamb. This little girl can immediately go to his house as his wife. Mother showed no concern. On the contrary, her eyes lit up with greed at the mention of 5,000 yuan. 5,000 yuan and a lamb? This brat finally has some value. In just a few sentences, they had sold me off like a commodity. My heart pounded erratically. I unconsciously scanned the yard, looking for an opportunity to escape. But unexpectedly, their plan couldn't be carried out. I contracted an acute infectious disease, and it was highly probable I was on the verge of death. When my paternal cousin and mother found out, they covered their noses, cursed their bad luck, threw 600 yuan at me, and kicked me out of the house. No one would buy a girl with an infectious disease who could die at any moment. Even if I were sent to that old man's house, he would immediately send me back. They wouldn't make a losing deal. Initially, they wanted to kick me out immediately, but fearing neighborhood gossip, my paternal cousin threw 600 yuan at me so that if anyone asked later, they'd have something to say. I pretended to cry and beg, sobbing and coughing violently. Hearing this, they immediately recoiled from me and left with my brother. The locked gate of the house also severed all ties between me and them. I cried as I walked around the village, making sure everyone knew what they had done. After confirming the news had spread, I followed a small path out of the village to the bus stop I remembered from my memories. I would go to the town to find work and support myself. The rashes on my skin gradually disappeared, and my high fever subsided. In reality, they had never verified whether I truly had an infectious disease, but because my symptoms were so similar, and they regarded infectious diseases like the plague, they quickly discarded me like trash. Thanks to this, I no longer had to dig through garbage for food. I had been allergic to wild fruits since childhood. I knew this. Back then, Mother took me up the mountain to pick fruits. I ate just one and my whole body broke out in a rash, but at that exact moment, Mother discovered she was pregnant and completely disregarded my symptoms. By the time she paid attention, my allergy had long since cleared. It was precisely their indifference over the years that gave me the chance to escape. I changed my name, Chillify, that twisted family name of theirs, why should I bear it? I changed it to Alice Dandelion, like a wild dandelion, never trimmed. My future would be shaped by me alone. I knew clearly that I had to study. That was my aspiration, my ideal. But 600 yuan wasn't enough to realize that ideal. First, I had to support myself. 6 years passed, and my work became increasingly stable. Over those 6 years, I distributed flyers, waited tables, and even worked night shifts at a convenience store to earn extra money. Though exhausted, I truly learned a lot from those experiences. It was during this time that I met the benefactor of my life. He brought me into his company, starting from the lowest position. We had an agreement. Within 2 years, if I could maintain the highest sales position for at least 6 months, he would give me the opportunity to study abroad, an opportunity I had never dared to dream of before. So, I worked like mad. In less than a year, I met the condition. Outside of work, I also used my time to learn English. Though not truly fluent, daily communication was no longer an issue. I felt my soul expanding. True to his agreement, he sent me to England to study abroad, arranging everything meticulously. He frequently checked on my life, and whenever he traveled to England for business, he always made time to meet me. Sometimes I questioned his intentions. Growing up in such a family, I couldn't easily trust anyone. After listening, he just patted my head like an elder, smiling without a word. Only when I pressed him, annoyed, did he gently reply, "If you ever sit in my position, I'll tell you then." After 2 years of study, I returned to the country. Defying all opposition, he promoted me to vice president of sales. Many thought I had a special relationship with him, but when they witnessed my relentless work ethic, they gradually came to respect me. Especially when they learned I was the madwoman who had held the #1 sales position for a full year prior, no one dared to say anything anymore. I rose very quickly. He also spared no effort in supporting me. At 30, I took over his position. The first time I had an interview, I was very nervous, but as soon as I saw him standing behind the reporter, observing me with encouraging eyes, I gradually calmed down. Everything was falling into place, and my life was becoming more manageable. Before I could enjoy it for long, the uninvited guests came knocking. Liam carried my paternal cousin to the base of the company building, holding a loudspeaker, crying and screaming, twisting facts. He even managed to drag in the media from who knows where, surrounding the entire company like sardines. "Alice Dandelion, have you forgotten your family now that you're well off? How could you be so heartless? You tricked us out of all our money and disappeared. Are you going to leave our whole family to starve?" Beside him, my paternal cousin breathed weakly, looking as if he were on the verge of death. If they truly cared about him, shouldn't they have taken him straight to the hospital? Why drag him here to make a spectacle? Witnessing this scene, a large crowd of passers-by gathered. Some, easily swayed by the fabricated stories, thought I was heartlessly abandoning my family. But many of my colleagues who had worked with me spoke up in my defense. CEO Alice left home to be independent when she was just a teenager. Has anyone ever seen any relatives come looking for her before? Why do they all crawl out of the woodwork now that she's been promoted? Yet, there were also outsiders, especially older men and women, who still criticized me for being callous. They're still family, aren't they? Aren't they blood relatives? Who else would they turn to if they had no way to live? I just stood there, observing, offering no explanation. My assistant wanted to say something, but when he saw my eyes, he immediately understood and fell silent. For the next 2 weeks, Liam carried my paternal cousin to the front of the company every single day. The situation escalated. Even many media outlets started spontaneously coming to interview him. He cried hysterically, yelling with indignation, "My sister not only killed grandfather and father, but also framed grandmother, sending her to prison." My mother also suffered because of her. Our family didn't treat her badly, yet she tricked us out of all our money and ran away. Who knew she'd go and latch onto some rich man, and now she wants to abandon her poor family? He couldn't even make up a coherent story. Anyone who bothered to investigate would find every word was a lie. But public opinion grew, severely damaging the company's image. The parent company sent someone to meet me, saying that if I didn't resolve it properly, I would be fired next week. I calmly looked at the person opposite me. Seeing my composure, he left, only leaving a single remark: "It's best to resolve it quickly." Of course, I would resolve this quickly. 2 days later, the incident became a trending topic. Even many mainstream media outlets began to follow it closely. Now, almost the entire country knew about it. I signaled my assistant to start releasing the evidence we had prepared. At the same time, we contacted familiar media organizations, saying I accepted their interview invitations. My assistant acted very quickly. By that afternoon, he had arranged 2 major national television stations. I agreed to a live broadcast, both to ensure transparency and to prevent malicious editing by the media. The company announced the broadcast on its official platforms. When it was time to go live, over 1 million people poured in to watch. As soon as the broadcast began, comments flooded in with insults and personal attacks. "This woman killed her whole family. Now she's pretending to be missing. She doesn't support her family, yet she has the audacity to appear here. If it weren't for her parents, would she be where she is today? So young and in this position, she must have latched onto a sugar daddy." I watched the constantly flashing screen, giving a faint smile. Calmly, I said, "Today I will clarify all matters. I hope everyone can listen calmly." Clearly, no one cared about my words. The insults grew even more malicious. I ignored those comments. The reporter was ready and the official interview began. "Reporter, people say you killed your grandfather and father and even framed your grandmother to send her to prison. Is this true?" I maintained a serene smile, picked up the microphone, and replied, "Of course not." As soon as I learned of this incident, I proactively reported it to the police and found several witnesses. First, I want to clarify one thing. That year, the deaths of my grandfather and father were not related to me. My brother was only 10 years old at the time. He poured a large amount of highly toxic pesticide into the family's flour. I tried to stop him many times, but grandmother still used that flour to make soup. As a result, that evening, my grandfather and father were poisoned and died. I paused for a moment, seeing that many viewers had started to quiet down, but some still didn't believe me, thinking I was distorting the truth. I continued, "If responsibility truly needs to be assigned, then my grandmother and brother are the real culprits. I survived not because of luck, but because grandmother, believing I wanted to throw away the flour, beat me and starved me for 2 days. Fortunately, when I went to the hospital to care for them, a nurse secretly gave me a glucose IV. Otherwise, I would have fainted right there in the hospital. As for grandmother's imprisonment, it had nothing to do with me. No one in my family knew she had used the poisoned flour to feed the geese and then had them butchered for grandfather's funeral. As a result, many neighbors suffered food poisoning." Just as I was speaking, a voice rang out from behind. I turned and saw Lily, the girl who had been sold off just because her family didn't have money for her brother's wedding. She gave a cold smile, took the microphone, and said, "The one who was truly abandoned was her. Our village is a backward rural area where most 16-year-old girls are sold off. She was almost sold, but at that time she was diagnosed with an acute infectious disease. Her mother and paternal cousin, fearing bad luck, ruthlessly kicked her out of the house. This is something the whole village knows." Just then, the police announced the investigation results. According to the report, Liam had deliberately incited public opinion with the aim of extorting money from me. After being sent to live with his paternal cousin, he idled away his time, only knowing how to spend money lavishly to impress his friends. He frequently invited guests to eat silkworm pupae, leaving him with insufficient funds to cover living expenses. Even the house and land in the village had been completely sold off by him. When he ran out of money, he and his paternal cousin targeted my mother. The police continued to announce a shocking truth. Years ago, when they couldn't sell me, they turned to selling my mother. They knocked my mother unconscious and sold her to that old, disabled man. My mother endured beatings for a long time, to the point where her mind was no longer clear. Eventually, she died from infected wounds. It was this current incident that helped the police uncover and reveal the truth. It turned out that when Liam saw my interview on television, he realized I was living a very good life. But at that moment, his paternal cousin suffered a stroke. He didn't take him to the hospital. Instead, he saw this as a good opportunity to extort money. So he dragged him to my company, staging this act of being abandoned by a relative. When the official investigation results were announced, public opinion completely reversed. I looked at my watch. The time was ripe. I solemnly declared that the company would resolutely pursue legal action against the individuals and media organizations that had participated in this defamation. The interview finally concluded safely. I looked at Lily's emaciated face, took her hand, and cried silently. If it hadn't been for her when I was little, I might have been beaten to death long ago. As a child, I was frail, beaten by my parents until I bled, with no one bothering to bandage me or give me food. Each time, Lily secretly shared food with me and found bandages to help me treat my wounds. If it weren't for her, I wouldn't have lived to see today. She gently patted my shoulder, just as she had always comforted me before, smiling softly. "Everything is over now, little Alice." As for my paternal cousin, his illness had progressed too far. That day, Liam was too busy trying to escape and didn't care about him at all. He was left exposed to the scorching sun for 3 or 4 hours. By the time passers-by found him, he was taken to the hospital, but it was too late. Liam tried to flee back to his hometown but was caught right at the bus station. Only then did he realize he had provoked the wrong person. Not long after being imprisoned, he had a lawyer beg for my forgiveness. When I heard that shameless lawyer speak, I simply replied coldly, "I have no more relatives. He deserves what he gets today." With that, I blocked all contact with that lawyer. Not long after, Liam was sentenced to a total of 15 years in prison for intentional murder and human trafficking. Looking at the verdict, I suddenly recalled the door that had slammed shut in front of me years ago. But this time, it wasn't a feeling of helplessness, but one of complete liberation. Liam was a ticking time bomb. Initially, I thought that as long as he lived peacefully, I wouldn't need to interfere with him. But indeed, he was no different from the others in that family, brainless, stupid, and greedy. On the day Liam was sentenced, I went to the courthouse. He wore an orange vest, his face pale and lifeless, sitting hunched in the middle of the courtroom. After being convicted, he suddenly became agitated, screaming, trying to say something to me, but the police held him firmly. Looking at him like that, I felt no joy, no glee, not even a single emotion. From the day I walked out of that house, they and I had no more connection. He was nothing more than a stranger on the street to me. After this incident, not only was the company unaffected, but product sales also soared. Many people who heard my story tried to slander me, claiming I rode on men's coattails or used, under the table, rules to get promoted. But after digging into all the information, they quietly gave up, because the company had publicly disclosed my entire work record, including my achievements, working hours, and reasons for promotion. Many people came to look for gossip, but the more they saw, the quieter they became. Those who had previously screamed criticism were now nowhere to be found. I knew their prejudice against me was simply because I was a woman, but I wanted to show them that gender couldn't bind me. I was the one who determined my own destiny. There was one thing that always weighed on my mind. I had never received a formal education. Even with studying abroad, I still felt it wasn't enough to fill this gap. But I knew my age was no longer suitable for returning to school. So, I decided to place my hopes in the next generation. I allocated 50% of my annual income to establish a scholarship fund. Any girl who wanted to study could apply for assistance. I hoped that no girl would be bound by family and money. Not only that, but I also used that money to build a school in the very village where I grew up. This school only admitted female students, completely free of charge. Male students who wished to attend had to pay tuition. This decision, of course, drew a lot of criticism. They called me discriminatory, saying I was putting on a show. But we all understood that only this way would girls have the greatest opportunity to attend school. When the enrollment rate for girls increased, that was enough. Some said that even with an education, girls would still be forced back home to care for their younger brothers, and even after studying, they wouldn't leave the village. But the truth proved otherwise. More and more girls left the village, and the enrollment rate for girls continued to rise. This was a slow and long process, but I believed that as long as they worked hard, they would surely achieve their goals. Looking at the young girls, I saw myself in them, other versions of me, other paths I might have taken. Just as on my birthday, my benefactor once said, "Looking at you, I see another possibility for myself." Lily placed a new contract in front of me. After signing it, I looked at her. We exchanged smiles. She pointed out the window. The sky was clear and brilliant after the rain. "Beautiful weather. Shall we go for a walk?"